It was supposed to be a simple drive, 2 hours from my sister's place back to my apartment. I've made the trip countless times, but that night felt different. Maybe it was the fog rolling in unnaturally thick, or the way my phone kept dropping signal. But I brushed off the unease, blaming it on exhaustion. I should have stayed the night. The highway was empty, just me and the hum of the engine. I switched on the high beams, but the fog swallowed them whole. The world beyond my windshield seemed to dissolve into a wall of gray. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, squinting at the dotted lines barely visible on the road. About 20 minutes in, the radio fizzled out, replaced by static. I turned it off, letting the silence settle. That's when I noticed the sound, faint at first, a low rhythmic thumping. Thump, thump, thump. I frowned, thinking it was a flat tire. I pulled over, the gravel crunching beneath my wheels. Grabbing my flashlight, I stepped out into the chilly night air. The fog clung to my skin, cold and damp, muffling the world around me. I checked all 4 tires. They were fine. No branches stuck under the car, no sign of anything amiss. Shrugging it off as a trick of my mind, I got back in. But the moment I started driving again, the thumping returned, louder this time. Thump, thump, thump. It was coming from the trunk. My stomach tightened. I knew I hadn't put anything in there. With a deep breath, I pulled over again, heart pounding. This time, I hesitated before stepping out. The night felt heavier, the fog denser, as if the air itself was waiting for something. I approached the trunk slowly, my breath visible in the cold. Fumbling with the key, I popped it open, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. Empty. The trunk was completely empty. I stood there, staring, the thumping now echoing in my ears, though I couldn't tell if it was real or just my imagination. That's when I heard it. A soft whisper, barely audible over the pounding in my chest. "Why did you stop?" I spun around, the flashlight shaking in my hand. No one was there. The fog stretched endlessly, swallowing the faint glow of my car's taillights. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice trembling. No response, just the suffocating silence of the night. I slammed the trunk shut and hurried back to the driver's seat, locking the doors. My hands were shaking as I started the car and pulled back onto the road. The thumping had stopped, but now I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I glanced in the rearview mirror, and for a split second I saw something or someone sitting in the back seat. Pale skin, hollow eyes. But when I whipped around, the back seat was empty. My breathing quickened. I told myself it was just my tired mind playing tricks. I turned my focus back to the road, but every few minutes, I caught glimpses of that figure in the mirror, always sitting perfectly still, watching me. I pressed harder on the gas. The empty highway stretched on endlessly, mile markers passing in a blur. My GPS was useless without signal, but I was sure I should have reached a turnoff by now. It felt like I'd been driving in circles, the same stretch of road repeating itself. And then the lights appeared. At first I thought it was another car approaching from the opposite direction. Relief washed over me at the thought of another human presence. But as the lights drew nearer, I realized they weren't headlights. They were too high, too bright, like giant spotlights cutting through the fog. They stopped just ahead, hovering above the road. I slowed to a crawl, my pulse racing. The lights flickered, casting strange shadows across the trees lining the road. I was about to drive past them when the thumping started again. This time it wasn't just a sound, it felt like something was pounding from beneath the car, shaking the entire vehicle. I screamed, slamming on the brakes. The car skidded to a stop, and the lights above me blinked out, plunging everything into darkness. The silence was deafening. I sat frozen, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Slowly, I reached for my phone. No signal. But as I stared at the screen, a message appeared, one I hadn't sent, but it was from my number. "You can't run from it." My heart stopped. The screen flickered, and the message disappeared, replaced by another. "Look behind you." Every instinct screamed at me not to, but I couldn't help it. I turned, my body stiff with fear. The figure was there, sitting in the back seat, its hollow eyes locking onto mine. A chilling smile spread across its pale face. I bolted out of the car, stumbling onto the road. The fog seemed to close in, thicker than ever. I couldn't see more than a few feet in any direction. The headlights of my car flickered, then died, leaving me in complete darkness. Footsteps echoed around me, soft, deliberate. I spun in every direction, but there was nothing. Just the oppressive fog and the sound of my own panicked breathing. Then, the whisper came again, right next to my ear. "Why did you leave?" I ran. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to get away. The footsteps followed, slow and unhurried, as if whoever, or whatever, it was knew I couldn't escape. After what felt like hours, I stumbled upon an old rusted road sign, barely visible through the fog. The paint was peeling, but I could just make out the words. "Welcome to Black Hollow, population 0. I staggered back, the realization hitting me like a punch to the gut. I had never seen this town before, and it certainly wasn't on my route. The footsteps stopped. I turned, expecting to see the figure standing behind me, but there was only the empty road. And then the lights returned. They hovered above me, blinding and cold. The thumping started again, louder and more intense, as if coming from inside my own chest. I screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the fog. The last thing I saw was the pale figure stepping out of the mist, its hollow eyes gleaming in the unearthly light. And then everything went dark. I woke up in my car, parked on the side of the road. The sun was rising, the fog lifting. My phone buzzed with messages and missed calls, as if nothing had happened. But when I checked my rearview mirror, the back seat was empty, except for a single message, scrawled in condensation on the window. "See you next time."